He's going for it.
Imagine this. You're out at sea on your new sailing boat, going through the Strait of Gibraltar. The next thing, bang!
Oh my God.
You look down and you realise a pod of orcas has rammed your boat.
We are sinking, we are sinking.
Now, orcas, also known as killer whales, are one of the planet's true apex predators. They're absolutely massive creatures. I brought along a skull of a teenager here. An adult skull will be about twice the size, so you can imagine the damage that these things can inflict. They've been ramming boats, they've been biting the rudders off them, and in some extreme cases, they've also caused boats to sink. So we're going to explore a little bit of why this is happening. We're going to talk to some cetacean experts. Is it play? Is it revenge? Is it hunting? Or is it something else entirely? Let's check it out. The Strait of Gibraltar is the bit where Spain meets Africa. It's a 14-kilometre wide pinch point that also happens to be one of the busiest shipping lanes in the world. And what has been happening is this population of orcas, known as Iberian orcas, that live around the Strait of Gibraltar, have been ramming sailing boats
Oh my God.
with increasing frequency since 2020. In fact, over 700 boats have been attacked.
We lost both rudders.
For sailors here, it's a terrifying experience.
Nos están atacando el barco.
Nothing prepared to yourself for this kind of encounter. It was 5 orcas, probably 6 meters, 8 meters each orcas. We saw the orcas, 2 big orcas, try to go down and try to attack the rudder. And you have no idea how powerful they are. I mean, my skin is right now.
April 2023, I was delivering a catamaran from France. We didn't see them at all. Suddenly, a little bump under the bottom. It took them a few minutes and both rudders were gone. And they were just swimming around showing us, they did. And it happened before, even to us back in 2020. We've been attacked by a pack of adults. It was about 9 of them. Suddenly they started charging from both sides. Just right into our boat, like torpedo. And they were coming pretty fast, actually.
I was a skipper of Team Yayo in the ocean race. And we were doing our last leg from The Hague, the Netherlands, to Genova in Italy. There are 4 orcas, some of them starting hitting the rudders. I've never seen the wheel spinning so fast when they hit it. It's a massive force of nature. They come to the boat and they hit the rudder a few times and then they swam away and they came back, and that repeated itself for 3 times. So 3 times we thought, well, hey, crazy thing about this, like they started attacking boats like 4 years ago, and before that there was never a problem between boats and orcas. It always was fine, and like now they hit boats almost every day.
Now, this behaviour has really spiked since 2020. But orcas and boats have coexisted in the Strait of Gibraltar for over 3,000 years. So what is happening all of a sudden that is causing these orcas to attack boats? A quick internet search of orca attack will bring up all this information about orcas taking revenge, downing the super rich and reclaiming the ocean for themselves. It's a great story, it's quite exciting, but it's quite fantastical. Before we completely dismiss this revenge hypothesis, we should probably look at that in a little bit more detail. As a marine ecologist, I've campaigned for the release of captive orcas for the past 10 years. And one of the reasons I do this is if you take a large, intelligent animal that's used to living in very complex social hierarchies and also migrating 80 to 100 miles a day, and you stick that animal in a small tank and make it do tricks for food, the psychological stress and trauma that it causes quite often elicits aggression towards their trainers. So is this aggression that we see in captive orcas comparable to what is going on in and around the Straits of Gibraltar. So one particular orca that has garnered a lot of attention online is the matriarch known as White Gladys. So Gladys is an old, gnarled orca covered in scars. And if you look at this online, people suggest that this is because of a run-in with the fishing community, or maybe Gladys collided with a boat in the past and is full of revenge. So has Gladys been teaching her podmates to attack these boats to exact revenge? We currently don't have an experiment where we can test this out with orcas, but there is one really interesting experiment that's been done with crows by Washington State University. The researchers put on a caveman mask and trapped 7 crows. They then released the crows and would put on this caveman mask and walk around campus. And what they found is that 6 times as many crows came and scolded them, squawked to them, and interacted with them in a negative way than those original 7 that they caught. And what this shows is that not only are crows capable of recognizing different human faces, they also have a memory where they can remember human faces up to 17 years into the future, and crucially, they can transfer that knowledge to different crow individuals.
Orcas also have brilliant memories. They belong to the cetacean group of whales, dolphins and porpoises, and are the largest members of the notoriously clever oceanic dolphin family.
They've got the 3rd largest brain on the planet, and they live in complex social hierarchies in pods. Orcas, such as Gladys, can live up to 90 years. They're also one of the few animals that go through the menopause because there's benefit to these older females teaching the younger generations as they go on. For example, in 2025, the orca population in the Pacific Northwest was seen to come along and snap kelp fronds off and wipe them across each other's bodies in a form of social bonding. This same pod has seen to grieve the dead. One orca mother carried her dead calf on her head for over 2 weeks, swimming with it for over 1,000 miles. So there's clearly some very deep culture, some very important rituals that these creatures are going through.
So orcas certainly seem to have the mental capacity for revenge. But the problem is whether we can interpret the meaning behind their actions accurately.
We often see a behaviour and try to find something that we know as humans that we can label it as. So, for example, we might see a type of behaviour and we perceive that as being aggression. So we label it aggression, but that's purely a human construct. And so we don't actually know whether that's the case. It could be something else that we don't even have as humans as a behaviour, but we're always trying to label it to try and understand it. So definitely that is a real problem that we face when trying to understand animal behaviour.
And Gladys's scars, the source of all this perceived anger, might not have come from humans at all.
They're actually more likely to be due to something called teeth raking. And this is when orcas take their teeth, and they're pretty substantial teeth, and rake them down the sides of each other's bodies, leaving deep scars which then heal white. Hence her name, White Gladys. So if not revenge, then what? There are many other theories. So some researchers suggest that this behaviour isn't aggression at all and is actually older orcas teaching younger orcas how to hunt. Now there are at least 10 different orca populations around the world, of which the Iberian orca is just one of them. We refer to these different populations as ecotypes because each one of these orca populations has adapted to that specific environment, and in particular has adopted different hunting strategies depending on what food is available. For example, orcas around Antarctica have adapted ways of washing seals off of ice floes, whereas orcas around Patagonia beach themselves to eat sea lions. What makes the Iberian orca ecotype so special is their diet of bluefin tuna.
Dr. Ronald Di Stefantis leads CIRSE, a cetacean conservation organisation that's based in Spain. It's followed Iberian orcas for over 20 years and studies how they hunt tuna.
We made some biopsies on the killer whales and we saw that they only fish on bluefin tuna. This is important because this is first going to explain us why we see the orcas in May in the Strait and why they spread around the rest of the year. The bluefin tuna makes its gametic migration. In May, they come to the Strait, just here. They put the eggs on the Mediterranean Sea, and then in July, August, they come back through the Strait and they go to the Bay of Biscay. And this is why they are feeding all the year round. Then in May, they start to come back again. And what we see is that if you see the migration of the bluefin tuna, the killer whale have exactly the same kind of movements.
We're used to thinking of tuna as like little cans of meat, but a bluefin tuna can be up to 3 meters long, can weigh 700 kilos, and is capable of speeds of 70 kilometers an hour. As tuna are one of the fastest fish in the sea, it's going to be particularly difficult to catch one. So how do the orcas go about doing this? They work together as a team, corralling the tuna until they can separate one from the rest. Once that isolated tuna is out by itself, they take it in turns to chase it and to ram it until eventually they kill it and can eat it.
Renault's team uses specialist research tools to gather valuable data on orca feeding habits that might offer clues as to why the orcas are attacking boats.
So this cat cam is just this system we have here that has 4 suction cups, and we put it back on the whale, and this stays for 4 to 8 hours on the whale. You've got a camera here, a hydrophone, and a lot of accelerometers inside, a gyroscope. We know where the whale is going, how it's diving, and we can recover the movement of the orcas in the water. And thanks to that, we have incredible shots of how the killer whale was hunting bluefin tuna. There's a shot we took last year that is just amazing to see how the killer whale arrived and mainly how they fit together. So one of the orcas taking the tuna, the other one is taking it. So you see how the behavior is collaborative, and then when they catch it, they just eat it all together. This is how the culture is important, because it's spread, because the food is also spread, and this is how, thanks to this culture, they are able to survive.
So, are orcas using sailing boats as a test method to train younger orcas, juvenile orcas, on this technique? And this would explain why the orcas have only gone after sailing boat rudders and don't attack different types of vessels. Anecdotally, there is evidence that shows that the orcas are taking it in turns to ram boat rudders. So this would suggest that they are training how to hunt.
Younger orcas starts working on rudders, and the adults were just cruising around the boat and and supervise them basically, and watching them, what they're doing, if they're doing that right.
But Renault believes the rudder attacks are not about training younger orcas. He thinks the new behavior is related to the tuna in a different way.
Between 2005-2011, there was a big stress on the bluefin tuna because of overfishing, and there was almost extinct commercially. And the ICAT, this international commission for the Atlantic tuna, set up some quotas and practically forbidden to fish it for 5 or 6 years. The bluefin tuna recovered. The problem now is that we have a lot of bluefin tuna, so the orcas don't spend that much time hunting.
Bluefin tuna, also known as red tuna for their deep-coloured meat, are being commercially fished again. It offers an easy lunch for the orcas and a great opportunity for whale watching. Caterina Heyer operates tours bringing people in close contact with orcas.
As soon as the fishermen are going to catch the red tuna, which it starts in July and August, then of course we go out and watch the orcas catching the red tuna from the fisher line. So this is of course always for the people on the boat, this is great to watch how they're stealing the red tuna. It's only known here. I don't know any place where you can really see them how they steal from the fishermen a red tuna.
Renault believes the historical interactions with fishers and tourists underpins a complex relationship between between humans and the Iberian orcas, and is the key to the boat attacks.
Before 2005, the perception of the killiways was negative. Why? Because they were hunted by the fishermen, because they were interacting with the bluefin tuna, they were going to the nets, and the fishermen were just shooting them to raise them and so on. Since 2011, there's a lot of whale watching boats there. The perception they start to have with humans start to be positive. Why? Because the calf were around the whale watching boat, and they were starting to come to the boat, and the people were clapping and so on. So the relationship with humans had to be, for them, positive.
For Renal, it's this new familiarity that has led to the sailing boat interactions.
They were more and more brave, started to interact a bit more and more and more. In 2017, 2018, and we said, yeah, well, there's probably a big problem here that is going to come. And effectively, in 2020, we had the first interaction. Look, the sea for a mammal has to be super boring. There's nothing to play with. There's nothing to break. They need to interact. They need to play. And it's just for them environmental enrichment. What is interesting in that is that there is a new behavior that has been spreading horizontally between brothers and cousins, and then vertically to the mothers, to the grandma, and everybody is now interacting. So what is interesting here is to see how a behavior has been spreading horizontally and vertically.
So these Iberian orcas are just playing with their boats. Are there any other examples of orcas playing? Well, of course there are. And those orcas in the Pacific Northwest, the ones that were rubbing kelp on each other, they have also recently brought back a fad from the 1980s where they were wearing salmon on their heads like hats. Snazzy. So the idea behind this is that in bumper salmon years, when there's excess food available, they need to spend less time hunting, they can spend more time playing, and crucially, they can save a tasty snack on their head for later. And while us humans tend to take the idea of play for granted, in the animal kingdom, it takes on a slightly different nuance. And animal behavior researchers are quite keen to couple the idea of play with some kind of evolutionary benefit. But what if animals just play because they want to have fun? So in his book, The Genesis of Animal Play, Gordon Burghardt suggests that play emerges in times when animals have a surplus of resources. Resources like food, resources like time, space, and energy. So he was quite keen to study play behaviors in animals which we don't normally associate with play, things like fish and lizards. And what he saw was even in fish, like some species, would swim through bubbles. There was no benefit to swimming through the bubbles. They just potentially liked the feeling of the bubbles on their body. Far from having no evolutionary benefit, play has been shown to strengthen social connections, to help cultural transmission, especially in complex higher organisms like cetaceans and like primates. So seen through the lens of play, we've got a group of highly intelligent social marine mammals in the same space, have lots of fun, brightly coloured floating things, the boats. So is it that much of a surprise that they start messing around with them?
Whilst the play theory is compelling, there are other factors that could trigger orcas into attacking boats.
So some of you may remember in 2020, a big thing happened. It was the COVID pandemic. And what we saw as we were all inside is the amount of boats going about their business in the ocean massively reduced. We called this the anthropause, and the amount of noise pollution in our ocean dropped dramatically. So is this cause? Is this correlation? But what we've seen in the Strait of Gibraltar after the pandemic, that noise pollution has crept back up again. Over 300 vessels a day pass through the strait. That's one every 5 minutes. And the amount of noise given off by those vessel propellers, the echo sounders from fishermen, and Navy sonar may be affecting their behaviour in ways that we don't fully understand.
veterinary pathologist Dr. Brownlow investigates how noise can change the behaviour of marine mammals and cause stranding events along the Scottish coast.
We have, over the last couple of centuries, industrialised our oceans. We've made them more hazardous, more noisy, more harmful potentially. And deep diving animals, particular, once you get below 100 or so metres, it's pretty dark. So when you're down there, you rely on echolocation. They use sound to be able to feed, to be able to navigate, to be able to communicate. And therefore, if for some reason they can't use sound to do this, then all of those life processes can't happen. And what we have discovered is certain species are particularly susceptible to the impact of certain types of underwater noise. And the most pressing example of that is beaked whales and mid-range active sonar.
In July 2025, beaked whales, a type of deep diving cetacean, appeared stranded on beaches in Ireland, Scotland and the Netherlands, possibly disturbed by sonar activity. Like orcas, they have special bones in their ears that make them sensitive to loud underwater noises.
In the human body, the smallest bones that we have are in our ears. But because orcas echolocate, they need to have a much wider range of hearing. So what I've got here are some orca inner ear bones. And you can see how massive these things are. So for an animal that relies so heavily on sound, not only to communicate, but also to hunt and find prey, the noise given off by these vessels must be excruciating.
But figuring out if noise was the cause of death is easier said than done.
What we see as pathologists is understanding the impact of underwater noise is challenging. At one end, if you're exposed to very loud noise, as in there's an underwater explosion or some incredibly loud sort of sonar, they can cause rupture of tissues, bleeding, hemorrhage, you'd see that. And then as you sort of lower the intensity, the impact of noise becomes more subtle. It can be that it causes the animal to not be able to hear at the frequencies. And there are other impacts of underwater noise where they change their behavior and they may come up to the surface too quickly, or they may not spend long enough on the surface before they go down for a second dive. And that can lead to decompression sickness, the bends. But then it becomes problematic because there are a lot of behavioral changes to noise. They may be pushed into areas which are more hazardous or more shallow, and that can cause them to strand, or it can cause them to be moved out of areas where they can get their prey. But those are indirect impacts. So that's why it makes this job a little bit harder to understand the general impacts of underwater noise.
Research published in 2024 found that orcas off the west coast of North America are suffering from noise pollution, impacting their ability to feed. And noise is not the only human factor that could be affecting the Iberian orca's behaviour.
For decades, we have been putting heavy metals and forever chemicals like PCBs into the marine environment.
Polychlorinated biphenyls have been banned since the 1980s, but they are so persistent that they are still affecting marine environments today.
The problem with orcas being apex predators at the top of the food web is they are particularly susceptible to something called bioaccumulation. Bioaccumulation is when toxic chemicals build up as they work their way up through the food chain into very, very toxic levels. And orcas, unfortunately, are one of the most polluted animals on the planet.
Brownlow has seen the devastating effects of PCBs firsthand with the small community of orcas in the Scottish Hebrides.
So Lulu was one killer whale that was part of a very small population of killer whales from the West Coast community. It numbered about less than 10 individuals. Rather sadly, Lulu was found dead stranded in 2016, but we took some blubber tissue from her and assessed the level of PCB burden in the blubber. And Lulu's blubber level was 957 milligrams per kilo, almost 100 times more than the minimum safe threshold. And when we looked at her ovaries, we found that rather than them looking like healthy reproductive tissue, they were small, wizened, connective tissue really only. There was virtually no active reproductive material there at all. It is sadly likely that that population, which has been unique to Scotland, to the UK, for hundreds of thousands of years, the separate population of killer whales will go extinct in the next few years.
The Iberian orcas are also known to have high levels of PCBs that have impacted fertility and hampered population recovery.
The real problem is the pollutants, and the real problem is the bluefin tuna. So we have to focus on really the diet. We have to focus on how many pollutants they have in the body. We have to focus on the genetic, because there's only 45 kiloways. Is this because the carrying capacity of the system is made only for 45 kiloways, or it's because it's totally endangered? Now the bluefin tuna is not depleted anymore, so we have to follow on the research on them, because the real aim in the end is the conservation of these orcas.
Whilst protecting orcas from pollution is no doubt vital, it is difficult to know if a sudden uptick of human activity after the COVID lockdown has caused the orcas to start biting rudders.
It's really important to understand that there are probably a multitude of stressors at play here, and these can be really difficult to tease apart and unpick. But if we are looking for sort of environmental reasons, then I think it's important to look at things like starvation, nutritional stress that might be leading to other depletion of nutrients. Also pollutants, we know those can have a neurological impact, but we also know that those can affect metabolism and they can affect nutrient cycling and absorption. So those are just a couple of other explanations why we might be seeing this behaviour.
But what can be done to help protect sailors and their vessels? Renaud and his team have been searching for solutions.
What we did, some satellite tags on the killer whales. We put until now 7 satellite tags, and we know exactly where they move. So thanks to that, we know that if you go to waters that are shallower than 30 meters depth, you're safe. And then we started to understand how could we solve the problem in case there's an attack. So what we did is some experiments with fake rudders, and we saw that if you stop, the orca can aim and break it. If you move, it's more difficult way. The fake rudder wasn't breaking when we were in movement, and the rudder was breaking when we stopped. We started to share this information as much as possible. And now what we see is that practically everybody takes the 30 meters depth, and practically everybody start to run as fast as possible when the orcas are coming. And what is interesting is that between 23 and 24, there was a reduction of 65% of interaction. And between 24 and 25 until now, there is a reduction of 40%.
Despite their traumatic experiences, sailors that have endured orca interactions still respect these majestic animals.
This experience was amazing for me. I never feel the angry, when you saw the... No. They was trying to play with us and with our best.
Are we living in their world, or are they living in our sea? And I think we should be able to share the sea, but also really know that we are asking a lot from the sea, with so many pollution into the sea, and we are eating their tuna, etc., etc. So we need to be able to find a balance.
It's just beautiful to watch them, right? This is where they live, and that's theirs, So we sail through their territory, and we should respect that. I believe that every sailor, true sailor, somebody, who loves ocean, who loves the touch with nature, will definitely do anything in their power to protect them.
For Renaud, changing the public perception of Iberian orcas is critical to their survival.
What we see is that the fishermen are not hunting them anymore, so that's a positive thing. We have the whale watching. Is it positive or negative? My feeling is that it's super positive. Thanks to the whale watching, the whales and dolphins, they've got a prize. And when you've got a prize in Europe today, that changes everything. The price of the pilot was here, we calculated it, it is around 200 million euros as a potential to generate for the whale watching companies and so on. So that makes more sense for the politician to protect them.
It means Renald's mission to help protect the orcas and other cetaceans in the Mediterranean can continue.
If you think of it, in 1998, nobody knew there was killer whale. Today we have a natural park for killer whales that was set up thanks to the research we've been making. We've got a conservation plan. It's the first conservation plan for a cetacean in the Mediterranean Sea. Regarding the orcas, right now the situation seems to be optimistic.
I think the next 5 to 10 years for these animals could be hopeful, but there are a lot of actions that we as humans need to take to make sure that's the case. So there are lots of things in the pipeline. I mean, there are various, COP, climate change, the plastics treaty, new chemicals regulation. All of these are really important. If we do the right thing, we'll see that reflected in the health of these populations.
Orcas are clearly just amazing. I'm a big fan. I don't know if you got that. One of the things that I love about studying orcas is they remind us of our place on the planet and that we share this Earth with other beings. There's an estimated 2 million other species in the ocean. The Iberian orcas are critically endangered, in part because of our actions. We've affected their future. So when they come along and interact with us, it's an important reminder that we are sharing the ocean with them too. So perhaps we should listen.